Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, stop right there. If you are not prepared for the salt levels of this episode, well, prepare yourself and then keep watching, please. So, on this episode, I'm going to be talking about a super salty commander that, well, doesn't really, need an introduction, but here we go. So, the commander that is super salty for this episode is Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. And actually, there is a cheaper version of this one. It's around $4 instead of $6. I just want to mention this first. It is in Phyrexian, though, so it's kind of hard for me to read on this episode. That being said, when I do say the estimated cost on Moxville is $21.03, I knew I would mess that up because it's actually around $19 because this version is only $4, or the other version is only $4 if you actually go and get the cheapest version. So there you go. Regardless, an incredibly budget-friendly, super salty deck. Now, what exactly does Jin-Gitaxias do, and why is it super salty? Here we go, a 5/5 Phyrexian Praetor for 7 mana in total. Whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, every single turn, with instant speed or flash things, we'll talk about some of those things here in a bit, you can get a copy of one of your spells if it meets those requirements. One of the requirements, I should say. Now, on the other hand, hey, let's just see what this does to your opponents. Whenever an opponent casts an artifact, instant or sorcery spell, counter that spell's ability triggers only once each turn. So, essentially, hey, let's double up your things and then cut your opponent's things in half. Especially brutal against their artifacts that they might want to cast on their turn. If they're like, well, I have a Soul Ring, but if I cast it, it just gets countered. Now your opponents are going to have to try to play around that free counter spell, essentially. And yeah, they can, decide that, okay, I'm going to save this spell up to cast that one, but yeah, free counter spells and also doubling up your things. This is a recipe for, well, salt, essentially. So yes, your opponents will be incredibly salty with this commander. And there's some ways that we can make them even saltier with this kind of a build. Let's jump into those. Again, right, to remind you that, hey, there is a deck list link in the description below. If you want a super salty commander, make sure you check that out. Again, only around $19. I don't have the exact amount in front of me because, again, the version of Jin-Gitaxias that is in Phyrexian that I cannot read, though I believe there are some out there that can in the Magic community. I am not one of them. Yeah, that is cheaper, so there we go. With all that said, let's jump into the tactics. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, double, because again, this commander can double up many things, including artifacts, including our mana rocks and ramp, like, Wayfarer's Bauble. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, of course. Pay 2 tap, sacrifice, go get a base land, into play tapped. And obviously, if you copied it with your commander, cool, you can do it twice now. Also, there is some controversy around this art, actually. Maybe I'll try and do an episode at some point around that. Regardless, that's off topic. Next up, Everflowing Chalice, a great flexible mana rock. Enters battlefield basically with half the amount of charge counters on it for the amount of mana that we put into it, and it can tap for that amount. Then we've got Arcane Signet, efficient and effective. Fractured Power Stone, very efficient, also effective. Does not tap for a blue, but that's okay. We're in mono blue. It's fine. It taps for colors. That's fine. Guardian Isle enters battlefield tap, but we can make it into a 2/2. Mind Stone, can tap to sacrifice it, pay 1 to tap and sacrifice to draw a card. To snack lens can help us filter our mana, or more likely again, just tapping for a colorless is fine. Then there's Sky Diamond, enters battlefield tap, taps for a blue. Worn Power Stone, a bit more in the mana value right there at 3. But, hey, it does tap for 2, though it does come into play. Tap so incredibly efficient, though. Hedron Archive also taps for 2. Does not going to play tap, which is lovely. And it can also pay 2, tap, sacrifice, draw 2 cards to replace it. Stone Spear Crystal also has a similar effect. Pay 2, tap, sacrifice, exile any of your target player's graveyards, which is fantastic. Getting rid of graveyards can be a very, very, very good thing, especially against certain kinds of decks, like, reanimator strategies, and also draw a card. Sisei's Ring taps for 2. So does Golem's Eye, exact same thing, essentially. And then finally, Dreamstone Hedron. Big mana right here. But hey, you know what? We want to get our commander out, and we want, well, big spells like this one to double up and get an absurd amount of value. Again, Dreamstone Hedron costs 6, taps for 3. Getting 2 of those, lovely. Taps for 6. Also pay 3, tap, and then draw 2 cards. Sorry, I said 2. 3, even better. So yeah, again, if you get 2 of these, you can draw up to 6 cards with that as well. Basically replace your hand. But now let's move on to tactic number 2, double down, because, well, we've got other ways to take advantage of our commander. doubling things up and, yeah, not just ramping, but reducing is huge. Ethereum Sculptor, a 1/2 Vidalcan Artificer. That is an artifact creature. Keep that in mind. It says artifact spells you cast cost 1 less cast. So getting 2 of these in play, that is massive, making many of our spells cost a lot less, and even many cost, well, nothing. Also, Foundry Inspector basically does the exact same thing, but at 3 mana. Then there's Power Stone Shard. This is a very interesting mana rock. It taps for 8 colors for each artifact you control named Power Stone Shard, which in most Commander games would be, well, just 1, because, hey, it's a singleton format, and you can't just include multiple. That being said, again, our Commander can double this up, and we have other ways to make more of them, too. So, yeah, they can tap for a lot more. Moving on, Victory Chimes, an incredible mana rock for this deck, an incredible one to get 2 of. Enters the battlefield, and we can tap it right away by giving a player, of our choice, colorless mana. And then also, hey, during each other player's untap step, we get to untap it so we can utilize it again and again and again. This is a very good card for, again, when we have flash for certain things, and also, again, for, of course, instants. And yeah, getting extra mana opponent's turns can be huge. Next up, though, and kind of the crux of the deck, let's talk about tech number 3, Mean Things. And yep, these are really mean. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff you might want to ask your play group about ahead of time. Although if you tell them that you're playing a super salty commander like Jin-Gitaxias and you're doing super salty things, then they're probably going to be like, yeah, this is super salty. I expected cards like this. Stone of Eric, a ledger artifact for a single mana. If a creature opponent controls would die, exile it instead. That is a massive effect against, well, many popular strategies out there, including Aristocrats, one of the most popular strategies of all time, because they like having death triggers for creatures. And this says, no, you don't get those. Also good against Reanimate or any kind of a deck that wants to have creatures in the graveyard. On top of that, pay 2 tap, sacrifice it, exile target player's graveyard, draw a card. Keep in mind that with these kind of mean artifacts, well, getting a second copy, I mean, it doesn't really double up that effect, but it does give us an extra copy that just can sit around, and our opponents have to deal with 2 things now if they really want to get rid of it. And also we can draw cards with this one. Speaking of which, Cursed Totem, artifact for 2, activated abilities of creatures can't be activated. Let's shut things down. There are many creatures out there, many commanders out there that have activated abilities, and we say, no, just not happening. You don't get those anymore. I am sorry. And also, I have 2 of these artifacts because I played it with my commander. And all of a sudden, yeah, you got to deal with both before you can actually do anything. Speaking of that, Damping Sphere. This one's quite funny. Oh, well, for you. Artifact for 2. If a land tap for 2 or more mana, it produces colors instead of the other type and amount. So already that can shut down people who are like, yeah, I've got Nyx Plumation in play. All my lands tap for 3 times. And you're like, no. Bad. Also, bounce lands, of course, tap for less too. On top of that, each spell player cast costs 1 more to cast for each other spell player has cast this turn. That is brutal. And again, obviously, if we get a second copy of this in play thanks to our commander, now it's going to be twice as much. Yes, this affects us as well on our turn, but again, we've got an absurd amount of ramp in this deck, so we're fine. And also on our opponent's turns, when they're like casting an artifact in their turn, like, oh, it's countered. Okay, I got to cast a second spell now. Oh, I've got to pay a lot more for it. Yeah, it's not going to go too well for them. Moving on. Sorcerer's Spyglass, an artifact for 2 mana, enters the battlefield, look at target opponent's hand, and choose any card name. So say, hey, you. Oh, and also, by the way, I got a second copy of this, so hey, you as well. Activated abilities of Sorcerer's chosen name can be activated with mana abilities. So basically, let's shut some things down. And yeah, also just be able to shut down commanders too. Then we've got Weathered Runestone. Non-land permanents cards in graveyards and libraries can't enter the battlefield. So that's a nice way to shut down certain decks out there. On top of that, players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. So again, another way to shut other kinds of decks out there that might be doing some obnoxious things. Though one could say our cards are obnoxious. Like, Blood Clock. Or how about, I have to scroll for it, sorry. Umbilicus. There we go. Basically the exact same card. Artifact for 4 at the beginning of each player's upkeep. The player may pay 2 life. If they don't, they return a permanent they control to its owner's hand. This can be a very bad thing for our opponents where they're like, oh, great, cool. I have to pay 4 essentially or return a permanent because, or 2 permanents, I guess, because again, essentially, hey, we're going to get a second copy of this, right? We're essentially going to say, hey, commander, double this up for us. Awesome. Yeah, opponents, start bouncing things back to your hand. And also, I actually want to bounce things back to my hand, because if I do bounce things back to my hand, I can replay them and double them up again with my commander. Lovely. Then we've got Mindlock Orb, also obnoxious. Players can't search libraries. Yeah, we're not going to be doing that too much with this kind of a deck. Our opponents, though, hey, sorry about that. Deck that wants to tutor for certain things. And also, deck over there that wants to keep ramping with lands. No more. You can't do that. Or how about Lodestone Golem? Again, we've got an absurd amount of artifact spells in this deck. The vast majority are And yeah, this one's a 5/3 golem for 4 mana. It says non-artifact spells cost 1 more to cast. And again, it's going to be 2 if we get 2 of these in play, thanks to our commander. And then our opponents are going to be very, very upset with us because not only are their spells going to be countered, but also their non-artifacts cost a lot more. Then how about Mirrorworks? Let's get even meaner. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2. If you do, create a token's copy of that artifact. So essentially, hey, you know these mean things that we're getting in play? Let's just pay 2 extra and get an extra copy of it, essentially. Absolutely brutal. And of course, this counts for everything, including like our mana rocks too. And then how about finally Faraz's Ban? Yeah, this janky old card can actually be incredibly effective with this deck. Artifact for 6. Basically, creature spells cost 2 more to cast, but again, get a second copy of it with your commander, and all of a sudden, creature spells cost 4 more to cast. Yeah, we do have some creature spells in this deck, including our commander, which is already, pretty costly. That being said, again, we've got an absurd amount of ways to ramp absurdly fast, and absurd amounts of ramp, essentially. So we're going to be fine. Opponents, though, are going to be like, okay, so you're countering my spells, making me cast extra spells on a turn to actually do things, and now I have to pay an extra 4 mana for every single one of my creatures, including my commander. Goodness gracious, all of the salt. But let's move on to tech number 4, Deadly Things. And first up, well, Sculpting Steel can be the deadliest card in our deck, or it can just be like another mana rock. It can be anything, essentially. Artifact for 3 mana. Enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield. Basically, a double clone for our artifacts again, thanks to our commander copying it. Yeah, absolutely lovely. Again, if we have those brutal, mean artifacts in play, we can get even more of them. Just think about 4 Faraz's Bans in play. Creature spells cost 8 more. Yeah, sorry, mono green stompy deck. Not happening today. Moving on, speaking of, well, mono green stompy decks or any kind of a creature-based strategy, good luck with Isolation Cell, especially when I get 2 of them. Whenever an opponent casts a creature spell, they lose 2 life unless they pay 2. That is an absurd amount of extra mana to pay again, or they're going to start losing a lot of life, especially again if we've already have, other things in play that make things cost even more. How about Machine God's Effigy, a card that can help us finish out a game in the right circumstance? An artifact for 4 mana, and a battlefield is a copy of a creature battlefield, accepts artifact, and has tap for a blue. Basically, a good kind of clone effect to say, hey, you got that creature over there with that cool ability. Awesome, now it's mine. Moving on, Dark Steel Juggernaut. This one, actually, getting a second copy can be quite fun because, hey, it's a star, indestructible for 5. Power toughness equal number of artifacts we control. And oh no, there's a downside. I have to attack each turn if able. I'm so sorry, opponents. It's not my fault I've got to take you out with these creatures. I have to attack. So yeah, basically making bigger and bigger and bigger juggernauts because you're playing more and more artifacts, and of course your commander's copying them. And then all of a sudden, your opponents have 20/20s, indestructibles, swinging at them, and they are very, very, very much in trouble, especially since we've got plenty of ways to clear the board and clear the way for them. Next up, Psychosis Crawler. No need to clear things out with this one. Star for Rexing that costs 5 mana. Power type is equal to the number of cards in your hand, so that can be pretty massive. On top of that, whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. We got plenty of ways to draw a lot of cards, actually, and yeah, having 2 of these in play means basically, hey, we've got a Shieldred of sorts, I guess, although in reverse. You know what I mean? Draining your opponents is a lot of fun. Speaking of which, a very slow, meticulous drain is with God Pharaoh Statue. Unfortunately, this is a legendary artifact, meaning that, if our commander copies it, we're just going to sacrifice 1 of them so we can't get 2. Which would be lovely if we could, because spells your opponent's cast costs 2 more to cast, so again, yet another massive taxing effect for them, even if we can't copy it. Behavior end step, each one loses 1 life, so slowly draining them away when they have nothing to do, because we have just slowed them down to a crawl. Absolutely lovely. How about Hulking Metamorph as well? A 7/7 clone, essentially, for 9 mana, or for just 4 mana, essentially, making a 3/3 copy of any creature or artifact on the board, or that we control, I should say. So yeah, we can make it into something absolutely deadly, and absolutely disgusting, and absolutely mean. Now, as good as all these cards are, there's one, in my opinion, that stands above the rest. That is a golden pig of this stack, which is the number 1 card over 99, and that is Shimmer Mir. Just 10 cents for a card that makes a massive impact with this stack. A 2/2 artifact creature mirror with flash that costs 3 mana. You may cast artifact spells with delay of flash. Very simple, very effective. All of a sudden, we can cast all of our artifacts whenever we want, which is massive because, again, on our opponent's turns, we can copy our artifacts thanks to our commander. So, doubling up on all the fun and, just having more flexibility with casting is never going to be a bad thing. So, an amazing card, one that really changes the game for us. Definitely worthy of the title of Golden Pig. Next up, let's move on to tactic number 6, stick around. Ways to keep our board just where it is, because we're going to set things up again where our opponent's going to be like, I need to stop them. I need to stop this madness. And we're like, no, the madness shall continue. Padim, Council of Innovation, a 1/4 Valkyrie Artificer, artifacts you control of hexproof. So yeah, good luck targeting any of my things to destroy them. Thank you. Beginning of your upkeep, if you control the artifact with the highest mana value or tied, draw a card. Yeah, that's going to happen. We're going to have that. We're going to be drawing a lot of cards with this. Next up, Soul of New Phyrexia, 6/6 Phyrexian Avatar for 6 mana with trample, pay 5. Permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Pay 5, exile from a grave, or get the exact same effect. So essentially, hey, as long as I've got mana open, which I'm going to because I've got plenty of ways to ramp, plenty of ways to make an absurd amount of mana rocks, I'm just going to keep mana open and just keep my board safe and fine from the vast majority of board wipes out there. And then finally, Wondrous Crucible. Artifact for 7 mana. It says permanents you control of Ward 2. Which basically, again, with this commander is, hey, let's get a second copy of this. All of a sudden, permanents I control have Ward 4, essentially, or 2 instances of 2. You know what I mean. So if your opponents want to try to do anything, again, they have to get around the countering from your commander. They have to get around whatever else you have. They have to get around this too. Absurd effect. On top of that, game your end step, mill 2 cards and exile a non-land card at random from your graveyard. Copy it, make cast a copy of the paying its mana cost. Yeah, you're going to be able to get a lot of free things now with this too. Oh, I mean, twice. 2 free things. Every single one of your turns. Have fun with that. Next up, though, let's go on to tactic number 7, Artifact Advantage, because, yeah, we need some ways to dig down into our deck. Let's talk about Pull from Tomorrow. Draw X cards, discard a single card. Yeah, doubling that up can be quite fun. Next up, Braided Net, a really cool new card. Enters the battlefield with 3 net counters on it. Tap, remove a net counter from it. Tap down any other target non-land permanent. Its activate abilities can be activated for as long as it remains tapped. A great way to tap things down. Again, getting a second copy of this can be absolutely brutal and fun. You craft it with an artifact, which is very easy for you to do, obviously, in this artifact-centric deck. Hey, we flip it over to Braided Quipu. 3 in a blue, tap, draw a card for each artifact you control, then put it into its owner's library, third from the top. This can just be like draw easily 20 plus cards. And again, we've got like 2 of them, so have fun with that, and you can get it back. Next up, Frantic Search. Draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, untap 3 lands. Not only is this a free spell, but again, with this commander, if it's the instant you're casting in a turn, hey, yeah, copy it, and then all of a sudden untap 3 more. Double loot twice, essentially, right? Double loot twice, plus 3 free mana after that. Lovely. How about Hilda's Crown of Winter? Pay 1, tap target creature, or pay 0 if it's during your turn. So great ways to just tap things down, get some things through, and then also on top of that, pay 3, sacrifice, draw a card for each tap creature opponent control. Yeah, this can just draw an absurd amount of cards. Moving on. Midnight Clock, a mana rock that can actually help us out. Not very efficient, 3 mana to tap for just a single blue mana. That being said, we can get hour counters on it by paying, or at the beginning of each upkeep, we get an hour counter on it. Once that 12th one's put on there, basically Time Twister, shuffle the graveyard, shuffle hand, in the library, draw 7. So yeah, getting 2 of these can be quite effective, especially when you can space them out by paying mana into that hour counter ability. Moving on, Scrap Trawler. This one can get us a lot of juicy things back. Whenever another artifacts put a grave from the battlefield, return to your hand, target artifact card in your graveyard of lesser mana value, essentially. Getting 2 of these means you get twice the effect. Absolutely absurd. Next up, Research Thief. Quite fun, quite brutally effective with this deck. 3/3 Flash Flying Moonfolk Wizard for 5 mana. Again, with Flash, you can cast an opponent's turn and just copy it. Lovely. Whenever an artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Having 2 of these in play means that every single time an artifact creature, like this lovely creature that has evasion, that is an artifact, gets through an opponent, we get to draw 2 cards instead of 1. So you had a massive draw engine for us. Speaking of which, Shimmer Dragon. 5/6 dragon with flying, as long as you control 4 more artifacts. It has hexproof. Tap 2 untap artifacts you control. Draw a card. So, hey, yeah, draw an absurd amount of cards with this throughout the game. And also, yeah, the hexproof is quite nice to keep it around. Finally, Wizard Spellbook, a really fun one. Artifact for 7 mana until tap, exile, and insert sorcery from a graveyard, roll a d20. If you get a 1 through 9, copy it, cast the copy. You have to pay for that. If you roll a 10 through 19, exact same thing, but just pay 1 instead of actually. So you can actually just, get a lot of value out of that. On top of that, the 20 means copy each card, exile, whip it, cast any number of copies without paying their mana cost. So have fun with that. And of course, you got twice the, ability to essentially hit that 20, or twice the ability to hit better numbers when you have 2 of these in play. So really, yeah, have fun. Have fun with that. But now let's move on to tactic number 8, Bounce House, because yeah, we got ways to bounce our opponent's things to really annoy them, especially when we bounce their artifact that they worked really hard to cast because they had to cast something else which got countered, then they cast that. Now we're bouncing out to their hand, they have to do that all over again. How about Blink of an Eye? Kick it. If you do, you get to draw a card when you're bouncing a non-land permanent. And keep in mind, hey, when a copied spell is kicked, or a kick spell is copied, let's say it that way, you also get the kick in the copy. So you get to draw 2 cards if you actually kick it, essentially, and this is your card that you copy with your commander. So we also have Into the Royal, which does the exact same thing, but just for 4 cents, apparently. Unsubstantiate, a great bounce spell, return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. So kind of like a temporary counter spell, one that says, hey, you get your spell back, but also, I'm going to bounce a creature, so you can do both. How about Aether Gale? Bounce 6 non-land permanents back to the owner's hands, and again, with this commander, it's like, oh no, you just paid 5 mana for that? That's 12 permanents you are bouncing. Have fun. Brawl's expertise slightly less, but you get to return up to 3 artifacts and or creatures back to their hands. You might actually choose one of your own if you want to recast it for another copy of it, essentially. On top of that, you may cast a card converted mana cost 4 less to your hand without paying its mana cost. Again, if this is the spell that we're copying on our turn, hey, 5 mana to cast 2 things that cost 4 less, that can be just like 8 mana value worth of that on top of all the bouncing. Mystic Confluence, very flexible, very efficient. Choose 3, choose the same mode more than once if you want. Counter a spell has to pay 3. Yeah, they're not going to be able to get past that because you can get up to 9 if you really need to. Turn target creature back to its owner's hand, so a massive bounce effect as well, or draw a card. So a lot of great options for this. Again, when you're copying it, that can be very brutal. One that unfortunately does not get copied with this deck, but is very worth it in a mono blue deck, Scourge of Fleets. 6/6 Kraken enters the battlefield. Return each creature opponent's control with toughness X less to its own hand or X the number of islands you control. Keep in mind, obviously this works really well with all those bounce effects that we've been talking about. So there you go. Yeah, there's a lot of great ways to deal with their opponent's things and really annoy them. Speaking of annoying our opponents, let's move on to attack number 9. Don't count on it because, yeah, we're also going to be running counter spells. Again, our opponent's things are already going to be getting countered. And on top of that, when we counter them, then they're going to be like, oh, okay, I just, like, played 2 spells, and then you countered it. I quit. I quit Magic forever. Yeah, Supreme Will, an instant for 3 mana. Counter target spell controller pays 3. On top of that, you choose the other option. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. One of them goes in your hand, the rest go in the bottom of your library in any order. Unwind, counter non-creature spell, untap up to 3 lands. Lovely. Then we got you find the villain's lair, counter target spell, draw 2, discard 2. So again, having options, never a bad thing. Insidious Will, counter target spell, or you can actually choose to target for a spell, or you can actually just copy the spell and then it is yours. So insert sorcery, I should say. Rewind, counter spell, untap 4 lands. So again, another way to just get a lot of mana. How about Forceful Denial though? Cascade, counter target spells. So yeah, being able to cascade is absolutely lovely. Being able to just get a free spell at the top, why not? Why not enjoy that extra stuff? But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this stack, let's move on to attack number 10, Great Land, where we talk about a Great Land. Draw Your Disruption, a very simple card in MDFC land. On the back, it's an island, essentially. Not an island, but it's a land that enters the battlefield taps for a blue. And on the front, we've got, well, a counterspell. Counter unless they pay 1. So just a simple effect like this, again, can add up because, hey, it's basically 2 with this commander because... well, again, it gets copied, and they say, oh, I had it for the 1, but not for the 2. And your land has stopped me. No. Salty. But now this episode is coming to a close. It's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know just how salty this deck is. Are there any cards that you would add into this deck that could make it even saltier? So yeah, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.